Welcome back to the show, all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Have you ever wondered how you can utilize public speaking skills to master any sales pitch? Well, my next guest certainly has done his research on this, and in fact, he educates folks through his YouTube channel. I am thrilled, as promised, to be joined by Brenden from Master Talk. Brenden, thank you so much for joining us here on Get Down to Business.
Of course, Shalom. How's it going?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much. So, Brenden, I want to always start with our listeners, with our guest story over here. I have to assume that you have a bit of a story of how you ended up teaching and coaching folks in public speaking. Brenden, how do you get started in this?
Yeah, of course. So when I was in university, Shalom, I used to do these things called case competitions. So think of it like it's like professional sports, but for nerds. While other guys my age were playing basketball or baseball or some other sport, I used that same competitive spirit and I applied it to presentations. So for 3 years, I presented hundreds of times, coached dozens of people on communication. By the time I landed a corporate job, after I graduated, I just asked myself the simple question, which was, how do I make a difference in the world? How do I contribute more to that world? That's where the idea for Master Talk came to be, because I realized that a lot of the communication information out there was really bad. You know, you hear advice like, oh, Shalom, you should get up on stage and be yourself. And I was like, what are you supposed to do with this advice anyways? So I started making videos in my mother's basement. One thing led to another, and Master Talk grew from there.
I love it. So you started a YouTube channel that where you're really helping the world master the art of public speaking and communication through coaching purpose-driven entrepreneurs on how to master their message and share their ideas with the world. So you are a believer that practice makes perfect. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this. Again, I'm chatting with Brenden from Master Talk. Amazing story over there. But Brenden, what is it that you actually do? How can our listeners, entrepreneurs from all over the country, all over the world, make a difference and start to improve their skills and ultimately have it translate into their professional life?
Of course. So I'll give you the easiest tip in the book that any entrepreneur who's listening, or really anybody who's listening, can apply this to every presentation in their life. And I call this the puzzle method. So public speaking in many ways is like a jigsaw puzzle. You know those 1,000-piece puzzles you kind of put together with your family? I guess now, because of COVID, I guess a lot more people are working on these puzzles. So if I asked you, Shalom, if you were working on this puzzle at your house, which pieces would you start with first and why?
Oh boy. I haven't done a jigsaw puzzle in a long time, but you're right. I have seen more of those done during COVID. I would assume I'd go with the corner.
Right. The corner. Exactly. You're absolutely right. You know, most people start with the corners, right? So you get the right framework and then you work your way in the middle. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, why don't we do that in public speaking?
Sure.
So because if you have a work presentation, you have a business-related presentation, what do? You start with the middle first. You shove a bunch of content in your presentation. You get to the presentation. You get to the last slide, and it sounds something like this. Thanks. But there's a better way to do this. Much like puzzles, treat your public speaking presentations the same way. Start with the edges first. Practice your introduction 50 times. Not 3 times, not 5 times, but 50 times. It actually won't take you that long. It'll take an hour. Do the same thing with the conclusion. What's a great movie with a terrible ending? A terrible movie. Same thing, 50 times.
Oh, so my gosh.
After 2 hours of practice, you'll look at your presentation and go, wow, I'm really good at this public speaking thing. And then with the confidence you now have, then tackle the middle. But remember, much like puzzles, who does puzzles on their own? Nobody. Work with a team. Work with a group of people that you enjoy, whether it's a Toastmasters club or just people in your community, and master the public speaking puzzle.
I love it. So start building that foundation, and practice does make perfect. So Brenden, I have to ask, you clearly build a persona. You are Brenden from Master Talk. You clearly have, like you said, you start with that corner, you start with that foundation. So why is building persona so important when talking with potential leads, prospects, whatever the case may be?
Of course. You know, the way that I see this is persona is a way for you to differentiate yourself from everyone else in your space. You know, the way that I see it, and many people agree with me on this, is this idea that businesses are slowly becoming media companies on their own Because now when we think about buying a product or service, we're not just looking at the product anymore. We're looking at the person behind that product. So if you take an example with fitness influencers who sell supplements, whenever I make a decision now to buy a fitness-related product, I don't just go to a store and pick up whatever's on the shelf. I ask myself, where does this product come from and who's currently endorsing that product? So that's one example of how everyone is becoming a media company. And I think that applies for any product or service, whether it's Elon Musk with Tesla or Steve Jobs with Apple. We always relate the product to the team and the individual behind that product. So we need to start thinking about personas and ways for us to differentiate ourselves in the same way I'm doing by providing 99% of my content for free.
I love it. And I appreciate that you are doing that. And we'll make sure that our listeners know where they can find more about Master Talk in just a moment. So we've talked about building that foundation. We've talked about the practice. We've talked about building that persona. But what about pace? I know that you've talked about this on your channel quite a bit. What about pace and actually the rate at which you are sharing information? What is right and what is wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea with pace, Shalom, is very simple. It's this idea that when we have dinner with our best friends, we don't want that conversation to end. We want it to last for a couple of hours. There's no one trying to run away from that dinner. But when we think about public speaking and presentations, it's actually rather the opposite. You know, our goal is to get in the presentation and get out as quickly as possible. It's more like a road runner rather than a long dinner conversation. So I would say the biggest mistake that most people make with pace is they're still in that road runner mentality. They're focused on getting in and getting out, and it's not really their fault. Most people see public speaking as a chore rather than the coffee chat, rather than the dinner conversation, or this conversation that we're having right now. So in that context, I want everyone who's listening to start thinking about pace in their presentations, like a dinner conversation. If you were in a situation where you didn't really want to leave, would you speak as quickly? And the answer is usually no.
That's great advice. Again, I'm chatting with Brenden from Master Talk, sharing some fantastic advice. And Brenden, you have shared a lot of advice with folks through your channel and through quite a bit of your own public speaking. I'd love to hear, what success stories can you share with our listeners?
Wow, I think for me, what's been particularly interesting, in the same way I'm sure you've had an equal number, if not more amounts of success with your show, Shalom, is this idea that when you create free content for the world, it doesn't just impact the people who pay you, it impacts the people who can't afford you. You know, a great coach and mentor of mine said that marketing is what changes the world, not necessarily just your coaching. So it's been great to see, you know, the 15-year-old girls who are using my public speaking videos to not be afraid in their classroom presentations. It's great to see the executive of a nonprofit who can't really afford a public speaking coach, but can still use my free videos to make a dent in the world. So it's just great to see that on a global scale, like I'm sure you see in your show.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure it's awesome to hear that feedback. So I've been chatting with the self-identified. I hate to say this, Brenden, but the self-identified nerd. You said it in the beginning of the interview, but you should wear that badge with pride because, like you said, it's all about building that persona, and you are teaching so many folks things that many people don't think of regularly, and you should be very, very proud of that. I've been chatting with Brenden from Master Talk, and Brenden, no doubt many of our listeners might be a little bit nervous, realizing that they've got some work ahead. So where can they go to learn more, and where can they go to learn from you about public speaking?
Of course, Shalom. The best way to reach me is definitely the YouTube channel. So all you have to do is go to YouTube, you type Master Talk in one word, and you'll find all my content that you can learn from on public speaking. Master
Talk. Check it out. You will not be disappointed, and it will affect your bottom line and how you engage with leads, prospects, and really anybody in your professional life and probably your personal life too. So Brenden, great advice as all of our listeners go into this last month of the year. It's time to start making those New Year's resolutions start to improve in every way. Brenden, thank you so much for joining us on the air, and come back real soon.
Of course, pleasure was mine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we have a treat in store for you. I am excited to be joined by attorney Stephen Leahy. You hear him before Get Down to Business goes live every single week. And now you get to hear him in the 6 o'clock hour because he will be joining me as my guest here on Get Down to Business. The host of the Trust Radio Network, the host of the IRS Radio Hour, Stephen A. Leahy joins me here on Get Down to Business. You don't want to miss it. Chicago, don't touch that dial. You are listening to the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. And you could get on my website, shalomklein.com, to download podcasts from the past almost 7 years of shows. We've featured some amazing entrepreneurs, and I'm absolutely thrilled to feature yet another one. Attorney Stephen A. Leahy joins me right after this quick break. Get on my website, shalomklein.com. Follow me on Twitter at shalomklein. Can't wait to join you in just a couple of minutes with Attorney Stephen A. Leahy.